my name is Mo, and welcome to the Can't Can Will podcast. I'm a Royal Marine who is dedicated to optimising human performance and want to bring you exposure to the fantastic people supporting the same aim. I had the privilege to speak with a former world boxing champion who went on to work as a Sky Sport boxing pundit and commentator for over 20 years. We talk about his daily struggle with mental ill health, the mindset required to becoming a champion, and the possibility of a comeback as he strives to be better tomorrow than today. Episode 14, Glenn McCrory.
I've had dramas, myself. About 3 years ago, I had a breakdown,
right,
and it came, to use a boxing analogy. Actually, it came at me like a right hook,
right,
and I was just sat in the office, and I didn't see it coming. It was pretty hardcore.
And how did it manifest itself?
Strangely, it was that I never felt I was enough.
Right.
For anything,
right,
at all, anything. So I would take on so much work that I was like distracting myself quite a lot, and I didn't realize it. It was. It got to the point where I was that overborne with stuff that I couldn't cope with it, and it was like the tidal wave that just came over.
That sort of, I can sort of appreciate that, because it's just, in a way, that's a sort of self-harm. What you're doing is
100%.
You're giving yourself too much on purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
It's something in us. I do the same thing. Take on too much work, or if I gotta enjoy a normal drink and a meal, and I love all that sort of stuff. But if my mindset is bad, then I just, I do it to the end. I do it like ridiculous, and it's
all or nothing.
Yeah, and it's not. There's no enjoyment in it. It's a kind of self-destruction, and it's and you kind of you kind of know you're doing it. And you're giving yourself, or if it's giving yourself too much to do, you're doing it, but you still take it on, and it's.
I've still not found out why, unless can you stop yourself from doing that? No.
And I know it's so much negative for me. But this trade's gone on for 30 years. I put myself in positions. Over the years, I put myself in positions to calm myself. I'd go on holiday with my friend we'd go on holiday, and we'd go to like Mexico, and not to the tourist area of Mexico, to the ghettos. We'd go to Mexico City, and we'd end up. We'd end up, and the amount of times Colombia, and the amount of times you think, what were we doing? What on earth were we doing in that situation? Brazil in the favelas, going up for a game of football, and you think, like, it just took one person just to take offense, and you were dead. And you kind of, for some reason, maybe being a fighter in me, it's a bit of a challenge. I sort of want a challenge. But it's you think you've got away with it for so long, and doing stuff like climbing mountains that you're totally not equipped for, no training whatsoever, no end up on a slough, and you when you're up there, you're thinking, like, I could die any day, any single day God chooses, I'm dead. Thank God he brings you down, but yeah, it's that same sort of thing that I don't know. I've talked to people. There's only the pandemic has done me, and probably last year because I've had jobs, and I've had like a good life. I've traveled, and I've sat ringside for big fights, and lots going on, and that's always got me a reason to get up in the morning and do something. And then when that stopped last year, it was just, everything was just not worth anything. You know, you look at yourself and think that I don't want to be here.
Is that because the distractions were taken away?
Yes, because you'd there would be something, and something fun. If it had been hard, that mightn't have been a distraction. But if it was fun or a challenge or something, you're constantly giving yourself stuff to do that keeps you going. You know, keeps you. And that was how I sort of coped it. That's how I sort of managed. But I couldn't manage, and I'm struggling now. You know, I struggled the last couple of days. Yeah. I talked to a girl 2 days ago, and we talked about all the problems and all the rest of it. And then I went and got like 4 bottles of wine, and I did exactly what I didn't want to do.
And I'm asking this because I've got my own opinions on the way that I would react. But if you know that's not you, if you know you're going to do it,
yeah, why don't you stop?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think because at the minute you're alone, and you just, and then you start daring yourself.
Terrible. It's terrible, isn't it? I know exactly what you mean. But you know, I think that
a sickness.
Do you know? I think that I would have been very similar this pandemic had I not had that experience a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is that I'm much better at knowing my strengths and weaknesses now and accepting me, I think.
Right.
I literally the other day, and I was with the kids, and in my head, I'm saying to myself, come on, play with them more, interact with them more. And in the other side, it's like, no, it's fine. They're all right. And I'm having an argument in my head, like just making a cup of tea, and the kids in the garden. Now, before that would have played up quite a lot. I'm not enough. I'm not a good enough dad. I should be doing more. But now I'm like, I sort of label that and I go, nah, that's not that. That's just that little man again on my shoulder talking in my ear, saying that I'm not good enough. And probably if you were stood there watching what had gone on that day, you'd say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You've been with the kids. You're good, dad. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm much better at identifying that now.
Yeah.
But still have my moments, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got my kids on the weekend, and I'm great when I've got them. That's a stimulation, and it's fun, and it's great. But then it's just when you're by yourself, and I've been by myself so much in this pandemic. Long hour, days in the house, and days and nights in the flat, and it just it's the worst I've ever been. And I just need to get out of this, and find some stimulation and some stuff to do. I have been training for a fight with Roy Jones, which looked like they were trying to put together, but it's knocked me back a little bit the last couple of weeks because the guy that was putting it on went in a coma with COVID, a self-induced coma. I'm just a young guy as well. So that's, then you think, it's just, you just think it's the story of your life. It's, if it wasn't for bad luck, you wouldn't have any, you kind of then you get on a bit of a downward spiral. You think, bollocks, and that's kind of my problem.
So I want to talk a little bit about that actually. So this there seems to be a bit of a resurgence or in popularity of the masters boxing scene. Having obviously, just seen Tyson and Jones Jr. just fought, didn't they?
Yeah.
So is that something we're gonna see more of? Do you think in the near future?
I'm not sure, Mark. To be honest, I'm not sure. I mean, there's talk of it, and I thought this would be next. Me and Jones would be next, and that would maybe set the dice going. But I think looking into trying to put stuff like that on it's complicated, you know. It's complicated to, you know, especially if you're dealing with older people, because I need time to get ready. It's not like somebody says, oh, you know what, it's back on again, we'll do it in 3 weeks. Just hold on a minute. It's like, that's not going to happen. You're not in a constant super fit state, you know, so you need a number of weeks. So it would take a bit of putting on.
Because I saw a program, it was probably a couple of years ago now, where I think it was hosted by Johnny Nelson, and it was the middleweights. And there's definite needles still between Steve Collins and Eubank, definitely. And I could absolutely see that, like, if this was something that grew, that fight could go again, because there's still no love lost between the two. I mean, how much of that is show, or like not with those two, but how much is actual? How do you know when two fighters really don't like each other and when they're putting it on?
It's easy to tell when it's real. But the thing is, in boxing, you know, on the whole, you'll probably find boxing, the fighters are, you know, the most easygoing people out there, you know, and friendly, and, you know, really good guys on the whole. But when there's a fight mooted, you then have to find a reason to want to beat this person up. You know, you got to have something that stokes you up a little bit. So you want to dislike them, and then, you know, it's like starting a fight. You know, you then say something to them because you want a reaction back, so that'll motivate you to get more angry. So you're trying to give yourself fuel for the fire, and you know, so that's how it works. So I've had a bad chest for the last couple of days.
It's all right.
You know, when you get everything at the minute, you panic on you. As soon as you get, you know, this time of year now, you'd say, oh mate, I'm a bit chesty, I've got a bit cold. But straight away you're thinking, I've got a pandemic, haven't I? You know, the minute you've got you've got a cough or a breathing or anything like that, you're like, oh no, I can't go anywhere. I can't see anybody. I can't. Do you know what I mean? It's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, you're right, mate. You're right. So, mate, going back to that point where you said about having needle and trying to have something that to help you motivate you against another fighter. So is winning just not enough then at the elite level?
No, I think you need to get a proper dislike of somebody. You need to really rile yourself up. When I fought for the world title, I fought a guy called Parrot Lumumba, and they took pictures of him everywhere. You know, the camp, everywhere. You know, if I lifted the toilet seat up, there was a picture of him. If I went in my bedroom, there was a picture. If I opened my blankets up, there was a picture of him. And it was, you know, it was sort of, at first it was a laugh, and then at the end, you know, you're ripping them up and you're throwing these pictures and you're pulling them off the toilet lid and all that sort of stuff. You know, so it's whatever. You know, whatever you can do to get that feeling of, you know, even if you're sparring, you know, I'd spar with my brothers, and, you know, but if they caught me with a good shot, the next minute you're trying to knock them out, you know, your own flesh and blood. You know, it's that instinct in us, isn't it? It's that, I'm sure in combat, you know, it's, you know, what would motivate in combat when, you know, surely you'll think and say, well, the guy, you know, they've done nothing to me. They've done nothing to me. How do you then motivate yourself to try and kill them?
Do you know, it's a really interesting comment you made because it jogs my memory of a guy called I was having a chat with a guy called Baz O'Connell, who was a former Royal Marine who's got a boxing gym in Hammersmith, State of Mind Fitness. And he was in the corner for George Groves for a couple of title fights, and, you know, he's worked his way up as a number 2, and he's looking at doing a number 1 now. Really good lad. And I was talking to him about professional boxing. We're talking about that sort of ethos and culture, and he said, mate, it's not the same as the Marines. So in answer to your question, what motivates us is our ethos and culture. It's having like-minded individuals that you can absolutely wholeheartedly rely on at any given moment, whether it be a time of peace or time of war. And those blokes that you might not speak to for 5 years, 6 years, you could call them in a heartbeat. They'd be there for you if you needed them. That's the loyalty, the brotherhood that's what we would fight for.
I've got a friend, Rick Clement, who's lost both legs in Afghanistan, and he's been phoning me up. He's been phoning me up to see how I am. And he's got regular surgery and this, that, and the other. And the guy's so upbeat. So much. He's so motivational to me. I know I've got somebody there that and he's a fighting man. He's obviously a soldier. But I've got somebody there that's someone that I know would understand if I phone up and say, Rick, I kind of cope.
Yeah. And I suppose so what it comes down to is for us, winning is about fighting for each other. It's about fighting for who we're with, and making sure that our professional standards and diligence are as high as they possibly can be at any given moment, because otherwise would let our teammates down. And so the win comes from being greater than some of your parts. So everyone doing that, and everyone strives to be excellent or as best as they can be. That then drives a standard, and that's what and collectively that's the way we go. And so when I was speaking to him about boxing, he said, that's not how boxing is. I said, what do you mean? He said that it's not like that at all. He said the glitz and glamour that you see on the telly is he said it's just not like that behind the scenes. He said it's really ruthless and cutthroat.
Yeah.
He said, and I said, so what about like the fighter's team? Surely the team that he's got around him would be, and he said it doesn't work like that all the time. It's all very, sometimes it's very contractual. It's very transactional relationships in boxing. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
That in any walk of and sport, any walk of life, and elite performance, to have a stable, solid team around you that you can wholeheartedly trust at any given moment, surely has got to underpin whether a performance or not. Is there any truth in that, or?
Well, my experience in the boxing world with team and managers is awful, and really where you were just a piece of meat. You were just there. You were there when they needed you if it worked, and then you're onto the next one. Just gone onto the next one when it didn't work. My world title, when I lost the world title, my manager, he was an American, and he just cut out. Knew I was going to lose, but still went through with the fight for me. Knew I couldn't make the weight, but still put me through that fight in a possible life or death situation, dehydrated, and then skedaddled with the money. I never saw him again.
Literally as clean cut as that.
Clean cut, just gone. 25 years of age I was. So it was, I had the best part of my career ahead of me. So for me, I'm the business of boxing. I hate because it literally is, and you see it all the time. There's nothing set up for the kids. Once they lose, and the trauma is often quite big of losing. I had because he left, I then got a tax bill that I hadn't earned the money, and I got a tax bill, and I had to come back. I retired. I hated boxing, didn't want to fight again, and I had to come back. And the only way I could get the money was to challenge Lennox Lewis at heavyweight, and it was one of those where you think, go on, I'm a fighter. I'll fight anybody. I'm scared of nobody. I'll fight anybody. But I didn't want to fight Lennox. You know what I mean? I knew he was on the way up, and I'd have to be at my very, 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 very best to even stay with him. And I wasn't. It was simply just I needed the money, and so I went through with that fight. But the after effects of that have lived with me to this day. you know, the fact that you had to go and embarrass yourself and you know, physically get beat up, and you know, I still have trauma about that to this day. I still have recurrent nightmares about getting a thing not ready, and it's always with Lennox, and you know, so.
When you say trauma, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? As in from the embarrassment, or what was it?
I mean, you kind of wash it away and think, you know, I got beat, fair enough. But I did a hypnotherapy session with a gentleman who works at he's based at Catterick Army Camp, and he put me through a hypnotherapy thing just recently. And he said to me, I'm going to do a session, you know, to help me with my mental health, and we're doing a session. And he said, right, I want to work on the Lewis fight. And I'm what? I want, you know, the post-traumatic stress that you had from Lennox, because that's obviously with you. And I'm like, is it? So he did this exercise to do the memory from the hotel to the fight and then back home, you know, that one night, that whole night, and sort of run it in your mind. And you're sitting at a cinema screen and you watch it on the screen, and then you speed it up, and then in the end it's that quick. It's gone from being in a comfortable place in the hotel to being back home. You've eradicated the memory. And then he said go back in the cinema now, and there you are sitting there, and so it's me as a 26-year-old, and he said, go and sit next to him, give yourself a cut. He said, give him. And you know how emotional it got, because I could see myself as that young man who had to do that, you know, who had to. And nobody said, well done, Glenn, you know what I mean, you're okay. Nobody sort of give me a cuddle and said, listen. And I started to cry. You know, because I could see myself, and I could see that I was still suffering from having to do that. It might sound a bit weird, but you know, just when you look back at yourself and you see that, you know, you were just a kid, and you were put in a situation by yourself. You know, you had the responsibility to do it. It was just all by yourself. Nobody took the punches. Nobody took the humiliation. Nobody took any of that. Just me. And you know, it was a really good thing to do. I mean, he's very good. And you know, it just made me realize that that's something that you should look into. And you probably do with the veterans, you know, to try and get sessions like that. Because one of the things he said, you know, why my problem has lasted, you know, my brother died, and you know, why that's lasted for 30 years. And he said, well, you know, what have you talked about much? I said, you know, I've taught, you know, they made a play about me and my brother called Carrie and David. They've done a documentary. There's a film. And I've went over this last 10 years. I've been doing a film, putting a script together for the last 10 years called Carrie and David. And the amount of times I've told that story. And he says, well, every time you tell the story, you just relive it. You just bring it back. So it's never gone. And I was like, that's exactly right. Why is it, how's it never gone? How's that memory never gone? And what do you do with soldiers that's gone through far, you know, more horrible things than I've been through, you know, with their post-traumatic stress? What sort of treatment is there for the military?
Well, what I'd say before I answer that is that it's not comparable. It's different. And so your experiences, and I think it's important to clarify as well, mate, because your experiences, my experiences, someone else's experiences have all got different. We're all different. We've all got different levels of capacity, resilience, predispositions. There's a whole myriad of variables that will make the same situation or exposure affect us in different ways.
Yeah.
So it's not comparable, mate. You know, how many people watch that Lewis fight?
Yeah, no, I know. I mean,
and so straight away, no one watches us when we're on ops. Like you see what I mean? It's completely different. So, but in terms of like the support, I mean, it's much better than where it was. So probably around about 10 years ago, in the height of Afghanistan, we didn't really, and say we as the military, didn't really know too much about mental ill health, although that we absolutely do employ specialists to treat mental illness without question. They know clearly a lot about the subject, but I'm talking about wider population of the military. And it was something that was overlooked probably by the wider military. Again, not the specialists, because I will never discredit those people. They do an absolutely fantastic job, always have done, and will continue to do. But it was probably because the amputations, gunshot wounds, blast injuries that were unfortunately an ever-present, were dominating much resource and time, because we weren't set up for that either. And so prosthesis development quickly, in a fairly short space of time, was developed at a fast rate of knots to be able to cope with the levels and severity of amputations that we were receiving back from the theatre of war. I mean, at one time, Camp Bastion, which was the central camp that you would fly into before you went around Afghanistan, that was the busiest trauma unit in the world. There was people flying out there to get experience because of the frequency and the intensity of the fighting was, and this wasn't just British troops. This was American, this was Danish, this was Estonian. These are other countries that are coming through there. I mean, it was hot, And so in terms of psychological health, people, that sort of came as a secondary, because you can see someone without a limb, you can see someone with a visual injury, but you can't see someone that's a psychological injury. And I think we're quite good at being social chameleons. I'm pretty sure that there's been times throughout the past 12 months, as you've alluded to, where people would think, oh, Glenn's all right, but no one sees you because you're in your flat. And the only time that you will see someone is when you're ready to maybe go on video, or whether you'll pick the phone up, and that's when you're all right, but not the other bits. So in terms of provision, I mean, it's got much better. There's still a lot of work we can do, and I'll never say it's perfect, and I don't think it ever will be perfect, because there's so many variables out there, and one size doesn't fit all, and it shouldn't do. But we always strive to be better than what we are, and we keep evolving, and we keep moving forward, and the right people in the right jobs are making much more of a difference, which is great. But we're by no means a finished article by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll have to meet with you, because I've been down to Limestone many times. You told me I come down and help them every year, train, for the championship.
The boxing, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was at the sportsman's dinner when you came down, and the lads were expecting some boxing dip, but you told a story about Kilimanjaro. Do you want to just relive that story for us? Because I found it really interesting, because it was completely out of, no one was expecting that's what you were going to say. Everyone was obviously expecting you to talk about boxing, but that's not what happened, because Kilimanjaro was quite a profound moment for you, wasn't it?
Kilimanjaro was amazing, because I got asked to do it off a guy phoned me up out of the blue, and Garon Williams, lovely kid, he said, I'm a boxing fan, blah blah blah. Have you ever thought about climbing? I thought, we all have adventure spirits and think about climbing Everest and all of this sort of stuff. But I'd never thought about it. I'd never actually been out and done any of it. He said, "Would you do Kilimanjaro and get it paid for, and this and the other, and we'll do it for charity?" And I was like, yeah. And so we had this conversation over a few weeks, and then he said, tell me about your brother. And I said, oh, my brother David had, he had Friedreich's ataxia, and it was a real struggle watching him die daily. Watching him, trying to keep him alive every time he choked, and it was a real traumatic experience. It was wonderful, and and eventually, he did pass. And he said, well, I've got Friedreich's ataxia as well. I was like, what? I thought we were climbing a mountain. And now my brother was fairly severely disabled. And I'm and he said, well, I'm not as bad as David. Things have moved on a little bit with treatment and that sort of stuff. And I'm wow. So we went, and it was profound, because it was to get the struggle to get Geraint up there, and the people that come together to help. The guys over there, the Africans that helped the guides were amazing, and just everything they did. It was an absolutely just one of the most magical moments in my life, and to get to the top with Geraint in a wheelchair, and to see what he did on a daily basis, and it was a wheelchair where he worked it himself. And Kilimanjaro is it's great, but it's not a walk in the park. I mean, it's still, people still can die up there, and it's still pretty dangerous. But it was monumental, and I don't think to be moved so much when we all got to the summit was just absolutely out of this world. And just to see, to see someone like Geraint, to see his effort, his bravery, was really quite humbling. It was really quite humbling.
So how many years ago was that?
It's just about 3 years, and then on the way down, 2.5 years, something. On the way down, I got asked if I'd climb Everest. And this is my sort of, me when I hit the button. I hit the button for here's a chance to kill myself. Yeah, I'll climb Everest. And then they said, well, you've got to do it. You can't just climb Everest. You've got to have some experience. You can't just, Kilimanjaro's still a trek. It's not a mountain. So they said, climb Manaslu with the special forces, for his name now, great climber. I'll come back to this, but Nims. Nims. So climb up with Nims, who's part of his world record attempt. So we did Manaslu, which is one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, and it was just another life-changing moment. And at the top, in Camp 4 at the top, I'm standing there, oxygen on, just below the summit, and a lady standing with her Sherpa from the next tent starts making noises, and I don't think this is funny, so I start taping her. She just keeled over and died, just right in front of me. Just it was. I put my phone down, thinking, oh my, I've got it's still on my phone. I haven't erased it. It's still on my phone, but stuff like that is super, super dangerous. But again, it was one of those things where I kind of put myself, and this is going back to the mental health thing, put myself in harm's way. Didn't really bother training, didn't bother, had no rope experience whatsoever, and it's all ropes, and didn't have half the equipment that I should have had. I've got a sleeping bag for 12 degrees when it went down to -40. Sort of stuff. Putting more clothes on to go to bed because you're freezing to death. But again, it turned out to be a monumental experience. It turned out to be to see the Sherpas and see the people living in the Himalayas and see the young kids carrying, massive packs on the back on a daily basis. Just, and the thing I remember the most, which was in the biggest hardship, you find the kids with the biggest smiles. It was the same in Africa. It was the same in Nepal. The biggest hardship, and coming down Kilimanjaro, one of the guys in the camp that were looking after us, he had training shoes on, and we're coming down an ash, down the side of the volcano, and we're coming down an ash, and it's like that, we're coming down. He's just laughing, and he's got the biggest pack on his head, and he's training shoe, the soles of his boots flapping on the, and I'm like, oh, gee. I give him my boots at the end, but just great characters. So So that's the thing about having so many uplifting things in my life. For some reason, you know, I'm religious. God's, with the hardship, also gives you some great moments. And the worst thing about the pandemic is there's been nothing. You know, I mean, it's great when I'm coming down, going to the training with the army, and you know, I have a very fulfilled life. You know, when I've been sitting ringside, traveling, you know, 27 years with Sky Sports, traveling the world. Last year, the beginning of the year, I thought, what a great year this is going to be. We spent my February was the Fury fight, Deontay Wilder fight, and then a weekend away with Tommy and the Royal Marines in Berlin.
Yeah, I heard about that.
which was psychologically I wasn't ready for.
I heard that you won though that weekend. Out of 50 blokes, that you were the winner. That's what Tommy said.
Did he?
Yeah, he said you were hands down the winner.
Right.
Unbelievable.
It was great, you know. So we started off the year thinking, what, you know, it's amazing how things change. You think, what a great year. You know, I had that fabulous from Las Vegas to Berlin, great fun. Then boom, the world just stopped.
Yeah, it did.
Not just stopped. It's then all these restrictions of you can't go and see your mom. You know, this is, you know, when you think what people's gone through over this last, you can't say goodbye to a loved one. You know, I mean, I've been at funerals, you know, when you're standing halfway down the road, seeing people like you've known all your life, you know, at the end, and you can't touch the coffin, you can't go and commiserate their family. It's you know, and we're all in it together, and we've all had the same stuff. But for anybody with you know, with these problems, with the darkness close by, you know, I think the fallout from this is going to be felt for a long time to come.
So my theory is, when you talk about darkness, my theory is this: I think everyone has got darkness, generally. And you can look at the most motivated individuals. I mean, to use a boxing individual icon, really, it's Tyson Fury. You know, for him to have done what he's done with the problems that he's had is incredible and genuinely inspirational. Like, and I'd love to meet him, to shake his hand, say thank you for being so open and honest. Because, you know, how he, you know, he's a character anyway, isn't he? But how he's done what he's done is truly remarkable. But I don't think that's uncommon in the, not that he's being a world champion is uncommon, but having darkness, I don't think it's uncommon. I think everyone to some extent has darkness in some way, shape or form, definitely. And I think there is some people are predispositioned to be able to deal with it better than others, and some people aren't. And as I said before, a whole host of other variables. But we're also very clever about not realizing when we've got the darkness and being able to cover it with other stuff. So we fill the day with all sorts. There's no time where you just sit down to yourself, none. And that's not healthy either. And there's an interesting on Instagram not long ago, I read the difference between being selfish and having something called self-care. And when you talk about self-care, a bunch of, you know, load of roughy tufty Royal Marines are like, yeah, whatever, you know. But the difference is that self-care is about looking after yourself, taking time for yourself to be good for others. Being selfish is basically just looking after yourself with irrelevant of others. And I think that we often misunderstand the two terms, and we cover up our lives with so much stuff that what this pandemic's done is stopped all that stuff, and now we've got to actually look at ourselves in the mirror. And what we're seeing in the reflection back is actually what we're seeing, because there's been nothing, everything's stopped other than Netflix, which I think I've completed about 3 times. You know, it's like everything's stopped. And now what you see in the mirror is who you are. It's stripped bare. And that's where I think that where we've, you know, compounded by the fact of not being able to say goodbye to loved ones, etc. I think that's where we've sort of hit a crossroads. And I'm not sure whether that's a good or bad thing. And the reason why I say I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, not in all situations, or you know, I'll caveat it with that. But sometimes I think we need to deal with the source of a problem, not the consequence. And if you're constantly dealing with the consequences, the source is never dealt with.
Yeah.
And maybe this is an opportunity for people to deal with the source of issues.
Well, for 30 years, with the problems that came with my brother, and I've got, you know, 6 other brothers and sisters who've all, you know, lovely parents. My dad's deceased now, but lovely parents. They've all got issues, and we come from a little village. My mum and dad fostered and adopted David, who then turned out to be disabled, and that's affected every one of us. Every one of us has been in bad relationships. Every one of us, you can't really cope. So it's not just me, but I'd never talked about it. I'd never mentioned it. It was one of those things, you know, you didn't talk about weakness. You know, you're a tough boxer and a world champion. So, you know, you never talk about, you know, how you cry yourself to sleep at nights on certain nights, and you don't know why. You know, you don't talk about stuff like that. You don't talk about, you know, not wanting to go on and, you know, doing a, you know, wishing you were dead. You don't talk about them sort of things. So it's only, so in a way, the things that's happened recently to make people start to talk about it is also helpful in a way, because you can sort of say, listen, I'm not the tough guy. I'm not the tough guy that you think I am. And I think that helps other people.
I think there's a difference between something being hard to do, which is talking, and beneficial. So it can be beneficial, but be really hard. So in a lot of situations, there will be people where this pandemic has stripped them bare, and that's beneficial because now the hard work starts and the opportunity to be able to deal with, you know, what other problems they've had, which might well be, you know, did the pandemic cause issues, or did it just reveal what was already there? And that's the question I suppose we're gonna end up finding out in the next sort of like 2 to 3 years.
Well, I definitely think in my case it revealed them. You know, it finally I had to, you know, the beginning of the year, I had to, you know, go to mental health services and ask for help. You know, go to alcohol services and just say, you know, this is you know, this is not right. I'm struggling, and doing that, you know, I'll be honest, I haven't done a great deal. I've got a lot of people to deal with, and the mental health service, as quick as they could go, you know, say I filled the form in, and you know, 1 week it was all doom and gloom and horrible, and the next week it was, you know, I felt great. You know, I was training, and you know, I had something to aspire to, and all the questions, you know, and literally that's how much you can change from black to white. They were like, oh, this is the best scores I've ever seen. But then a week later, you know, they said, okay, we've got to withdraw you now. You know, the week later you're back to square one, and that's how easy. You know, I don't know what it's like for yourself, but that's how easy I can go from black to white. And it can be one situation, one thing somebody says, one thing that happens in my life, and then you're just you're back in the dark, and it's.
I agree with you. I mean, it'd be really interesting for you actually. I did a podcast with a woman called Pam Diamond. She's on the link that I sent you, and she's a addiction specialist, and she's got an incredible story herself to tell. And I mean, I was listening to her, and I edited it out, but I'd be listening to her. She'll finish what she's saying, and I'd be, oh, sorry, because I was so transfixed in what she was saying. I wasn't thinking of the next questions, But it's worth having a listen. Pam Diamond, the name is. Yeah, incredible individual.
I haven't quite come to terms with that whole addiction thing, because I'm addicted to everything. It's just in my mind. If I start buying shoes, I buy 10 pairs. If I start, I buy the same suit. It's everything. If I don't want to drink, I can just not drink. It's not like any hold on me, I can do it.
It's on or off.
Yeah. If I buy sweets, if I buy, I get the kids, I buy sweets. I buy tons of them. And I can't stop eating them. It's kind of anything is, so it's very difficult to sort of say, if you just thought you had a problem with alcohol, and there is a problem, but if you just thought you had a problem with alcohol, just say, right, we'll get treatment and we'll stop, we'll never go. But then you can be quite normal with alcohol, and you can be quite, and everything's,
Mate, if you've got the time, have a listen. It's really interesting stuff. She's Pam Diamond.
Right.
She's an incredible woman. She's well known in our circles as well. Yeah, she's incredible. So yeah, have a listen, mate. I'd like to talk a bit about this movie that this script that you've been writing. And you said it was it's Brother David. It's called. Is that right?
Carrying David.
Carrying David. That's right. So what? So inspiration, I take it, was from your brother.
I've always had I've acted on stage, and I've been in film and stuff like that. So I've always had a fascination with characters, with the actors, the boxers, all that sort of stuff. So I've sort of liked scripts and doing that sort of stuff. So I had a script about a famous fighter that I took down, and I spoke to a journalist about it, and he said, "Oh, you need to come and see my friend. He's the head of Paramount or whatever." We're going back a long while now. And I said, great. I went down to see him. I sort of sold him the pitch, did the pitch to him. And he said, that's great. That's great. Give us, do a draft, do a synopsis draft. And I was like, okay. He said, but you know what? You've got to tell me, why are you doing this script? Your story's better than that. And I'm like, my story? What's my story? And I don't know how he knew that, he said about your brother and about the fight you had, the pair you had for you to become world champion, and how he was such an inspiration, and you carried him to school and all this sort of stuff. And so on the train on the way back, I thought, yeah, Carrying David. And this still is with, this is still with the mental health stuff, because David's sort of always with me, he's in a way it's sort of nice, but in a way it's bad, because it's also like that cloud is there, and it never sort of go. So I wrote a script, and it got picked up, and I've got the poster on the wall. Tom Hardy, who was not the name Tom Hardy at the present time, signed up to play me. We went and had dinner with Tom and all that, and it was wonderful. It was great. I thought fantastic. And then they didn't get the money. We went to the US to speak the studio and all that, and it just didn't happen. Didn't happen for one reason. Tom went off and did another, the fighter or whatever, and became a superstar. But it didn't happen then. So the script then went to somebody else, and that's where it is at the minute. It's with another company, and it just hasn't happened. But there was somebody got the idea and said, well, I want to do a theatre play, which is on in September at the Canal Caf in London. It's called Carrying David. It's a one-man play. Absolutely, Mickey, who plays the part, is a brilliant actor, and so it's worth seeing. And that's going on tour. And then there's somebody's just done a documentary, and there's a fabulous documentary called 300 Yards from Home. So we're kind of getting there. It's took a long time, and the only thing yet to go is the movie. But it's sort of getting there. And the 300 Yards from Home it's been previewed. It's on at a film festival at the minute. And he's done an unbelievable job with that. So it's yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Kerry and David will see the light of day. I'd love to think we could get the story of and it's my story. It's me and my brother, because his fight was far, and he ended up being there ringside on the night. His fight was far bigger than mine, and you'll understand that because you come across so many special men and women that have put their life on the line, for us. And just like Rick, who goes about, he's with no legs. He paid a massive sacrifice, and yet he's upbeat and he's a source of inspiration. So yes, so hopefully we get Kerry and David over the line.
Well, I hope so too, and I think it. From what I've read and heard about it, it'd be pretty fantastic and special to see, especially with your passion and devotion in that area. It'll certainly come across on the screen. So fingers crossed for it that someone snaps it up and turns it from a piece of paper into reality.
Yeah, I hope so, Mo. I hope so. We're getting there. The story's getting there,
mate. Your world title. When the night you won the world title, it wasn't necessarily in the most world title of venues, was it? Or like in terms of, we're not talking Wembley or a stadium, are we?
No. That's pretty much. Do you know what? It's pretty much like the whole of my career was crap.
so explain the details surrounding that, because you're in your local town, weren't you?
Yeah, it was 300 yards from home. I literally walked up that night with my bag on my shoulder from my house up to the venue. And the weirdest thing, Mo, was, and this sort of puts the understanding of how big it was I was walking up the street, Stanley County Durham, little mining village, and I'm walking up there and I'm looking around, I'm seeing limos and people in dinner jackets with cameras and all of it, and I swear to God, I went, what the hell's happening in Stanley tonight? I hadn't even comprehended that this is what, it was live on ITV, and Dickie Davis at the end of the broadcast says, wait, that's it from Stanley. Glenn McCrory's done the remarkable, and he's won the world title against all the odds, 300 yards from home. Next week, we're in Las Vegas, where Sugar Ray Leonard fights Tommy Hearns. And it was like, when has Stanley ever been mentioned in the same sentence?
How did that end up happening like that?
It happened because Para Lumumba had no popularity. He was a very, very good Kenyan who done most of his amateur career in Sweden, then been picked up by Don King and had moved to Las Vegas, but he wasn't he was a surly, not a very likable sort of guy. So, fan-wise, although he's a real talent, fan-wise, there was none. So to get him a world title, they were prepared to go and, go wherever and just pick the title up and come back. So that was it. That was he was the favorite, and that was his plan to do that. It was then mooted about in the Northeast, but we didn't have any venues. Even Newcastle didn't have a sort of venue of any size at the time. So the local council, which is probably the first time it would ever happen, a Labour council, just after we've lost everything. We're in the Thatcher era when we lost the steel company, lost the mines, lost everything. And so it was it was the number one unemployment black spot in the whole of Great Britain. There's this place called Derwentide, So the local council thought, had a great idea of one of our own is doing the unbelievable, fighting for the world title, the first world title fight ever in the Northeast. So they put an outlandish bid in to win the fight and brought it to the local leisure centre, which had just been built. Now, the good thing about, I don't know what the official numbers were. I don't know what they were supposed to be. But if the local council's putting the fight on, they literally did everything they could to make it they crammed thousands in there, and they took off doors, for fires, they did everything. And if you watch it on YouTube, it looks like it could be Madison Square Garden. It looks. I mean, and the crowd was just unbelievable. It was whatever it was, 3,000. It was like St. James's Park in there. The noise. It was spectacular. Ian Darke, commentating, one of the great commentators, he was commentating for the BBC, still says, and me and him were together for 20 years doing the big fights in Vegas and all over. He still says to this day that was one of the best atmospheres he's ever been in. And it was literally because it never happened before. Everybody crammed in, and although I didn't realize the scenario that Paralymon was just here to pick up the title. I didn't realize that, and I was training really hard, and I got my first chance at a training camp, some porta cabins in a hotel nearby, which I'd never had a training camp for any fights. It was literally, you got a phone call a week before, whatever, and you were there. So this time I trained like a professional, and I was in great shape. And then on the morning of the fight, I went in the hotel to get my breakfast, and I picked the paper up, and the headlines on the back page were Glenn's a goner. And it was, and the realization then came that it all sort of fitted in. This was just a little village in the Northeast where, and nobody special, where, somebody was coming to, John King's fighter was coming to take the title. And it was then that I thought it all slotted in, like, I'm not going to win this. This is not meant for me to win. And it was the first time in my life I sort of really looked inside myself and said, well, how much do you want it? So if you're going to get, how much do you want it? I remember thinking I'll die for it. And it was the weirdest moment, because it was just the sunshine on a June 3rd morning, and I'm just sitting by myself. I took a little walk, and I'm thinking, well, how much do you want it? How much do you want it? And I thought, I'll die for this. And it was like a light bulb went off. And it was like, you're going to win this. He's not prepared to die for it. He's coming over here, like it's a holiday to pick a belt up. He's not prepared to go where you're prepared to go. And I knew then I was going to win the fight. And the people in my camp didn't seem to think I was, because the mood in the dressing room was dire. It was all depressed, and so everybody kind of disappeared, the coaches and that, and the manager. And there was a priest and my friend who's a journalist. And it honestly felt like you're sitting there ready to go to the electric chair. There's just a priest standing there. A priest I didn't know, because my priest had died, and this journalist writing his story out. And they said, the coach come back in, the manager, and they said, right, it's time to go. And I walked out out of the which was a squash court, the dressing room, into the corridor, and the noise hit me like a jumbo jet. Honestly, you have never heard anything like it in your life. It was McCrory, and it just hit, and I was like, I remember then thinking, God, nobody's told this lot I'm gonna lose. Nobody's read the script to this lot, and it's amazing how something can fill you up. It just seemed like Superman had been exposed then.
We can imagine if that's what the effect on you, or it had on you. Can you imagine the effect it had on him, the negative effect?
Exactly. So it was really a case of, it was a tough fight, and my brother David wasn't supposed to be there, because my mum was nervous about the fight. So that he was sick, that he couldn't go, because she looked after him. So but the police, and I don't know how they knew, because she went to my auntie's house. She wasn't at home. She went, man, the police came with the sirens on and picked them up and brought them to the venue, halfway through the fight. Just as it was getting really hard, I saw him, I looked over, and he's ringside, just near my corner, and he's punching the air, and he's all animated. And then, so it was kind of like, for once in a lifetime, when things had always never gone right, and everything had been tough, and our childhood had been tough, and we never had any money, and all that sort of stuff. All of a sudden, everything aligned one night. Everything just got into place to make the greatest night the greatest night of my life, and nothing was, I went to bed and that was the greatest night of my life, and I woke up the next morning and it was the worst morning of my life because I had nothing else to conquer. I had nothing else to do. This is all me and my brother had, talked about, trained for, went through everything for. I'd never prepared to defend it. I'd only ever thought about getting there. I've been told since I was a kid, nobody wins a world title. Nobody's ever won a world title from the northeast of England. It's never been done. And then you do it. You climb Everest, and there's nothing left to conquer. And it was a massive it was a bottomless pit. And it sounds, after such a great moment, and that to me is the mental coaching. I had never been coached mentally. I'd never been coached off anybody, the people around me, the coaches or whoever I was involved with, had never talked about winning the world title, never mind defending it and anything like that. So I'd never been programmed. And I think that's why, you do need to train the mind. And it's so important. You need to tell, if I was training somebody now, it's not about winning the British title. It's when you win the British title, how we're going to get to the European title. Then what we're going to do to get to the world title. Then what we're going to do to defend the world. And so you've got a program, on a smaller scale in daily life. I think it's good if you could train. How am I going to stay fresh today? How am I going to stay focused today? How am I going to keep on the right track today? And that, that's where professionals will come in very good at focusing, training people to survive in the right way.
Yeah, I do not disagree with that at all. The basic psychological skills are effective no matter the size, whether it's a micro task or macro task. They're fairly simple and effective to achieve, but take hard work and practice to make them habitual. And I think you're right. I remember sitting in I was fortunate enough to go to the Paralympics with Team Ireland. One of my friends, he qualified for the games, and I went as his support staff. And we went to the beat up to the Olympics in Rio, and their training camps, and they said it's like the Olympics is like climbing Everest, and you work out how you're going to get up to the top in sport, but no one tells you how to come down the other side. And so you'll win your gold medal or whatever, or achieve what you set out to achieve. You get back and you hit a thump, and it is that absolute low. And they did a lot of work on trying to roadmap the other side of that peak to go back up to another peak, and it's keeping and it's managing expectations.
Yeah. Well, what do you do to, you said you had a breakdown. What do you do to try and avert that from happening again? What do you do to sort of?
Yeah. So a random one that I didn't realize a random one that I do that I didn't think would help was I track my sleep. So I've not really ever had problems with sleeping, but before that I did. But I track my sleep. So when I start becoming really tired, and not I think, let me rephrase this. When I start becoming really fatigued, it's probably like attritional, week after week. That's when like warning signs for me start happening, because then you lose focus on how much you're actually taking on.
Mm.
And so it's not the sleep that will affect me. It's my ability to cope with the capacity that I've taken on, the volume. And lack of sleep doesn't allow me to cope with that volume. If that makes sense.
Total sense. I know exactly.
So I try and track that. But I also much more self-aware. I'm much more self-aware. And one of the padres actually at work, I remember speaking to him, and he said that he used to fill his diary every day. And he was like, loved being busy because he was out, doing the pastoral care, meeting and greeting people, everything that he wanted to be a military padre, loved it. His boss came to see him and said, amazing management, said, let me have a look at your schedule. Because apparently it had been ages for his boss to plan a visit into him.
Yeah.
He showed him his diary. He said, it's too busy. He said, what do you mean? He said, put it this way. He said, what is your role here? He said, my role is to help and support and care for others, blah, blah, blah. He said, and what about you? He said, what do you mean about me? He said, well, if you don't look after yourself, and this is the self-care comment again, how can you then look after everyone else?
Yeah.
So he said, in future, what I want you to try and aim to do is have one thing in the morning and one thing in the afternoon that's booked in, by and large.
Yeah.
By and large. So one thing in the morning, one thing in the evening. Around that, then that's up to you. That's your time to be flexible. So if someone walks in your door and says, have you got a minute? You've got the time to give them because you're not being effective. But you still get your deliverables done, and it's about diary planning. So what I'm much better at doing now is I used to squeeze everything in and then go, my God, I haven't got enough time to prep for everything. I haven't got enough time for this. And I'm bouncing from one thing to the next, literally phone down, next one, or meeting this. And it just wasn't working. So now what I'll do is I'll make sure that my diary planning is much better. In conjunction with my sleep and just being more self-aware, knowing when that temperature starts rising inside.
Yeah. See, I've never had that because, when I was a fighter, obviously you've got a structured day and it's about exercise and, eating and sleeping and you've got some structure. But I've never had a job. So I've never had, so I say I've never had a job. Obviously I've worked, but I've never had a job. I've never had timetable. So, during my Sky days, it would be, Friday, the weekend was taken up. That was your work. And then, during the week you do your family stuff and that sort of stuff. So you had a bit of a schedule, but, there's always been lots and lots of downtime. And that's always, when you've got too much time on your hands as well, it's a problem, as having too little time on your hands, because then you just start, then you give yourself too much time to think, and then you start to doubt yourself, and then you start,
a sense of purpose is absolutely pivotal for me, without doubt. And if I don't have one, I can quickly go wayward.
Yeah, well, that's me. I've had a purpose for for 8 weeks to 10 weeks before the promoter got ill. Me and my son trained every day. He would train me. He wasn't born when I won world title, but he's trained me, big 6'5", and big healthy good kid, and he's enjoyed it very much, and I have. But it's been for the first time in years, and which was so good. It was about me. It was about, me running and what sort of time I'd done running or what I'd done. It's about me in the, had I managed my 8 rounds and, so it was about me. And for the first time in many, many years, that really felt good. That really felt good that you were putting some time into yourself and, your improvement physically and mentally. And then the minute that sort of got knocked off track, and you're thinking, well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I don't, please God, it still is going to happen. But it just knocked me off track. And only, it's a bit of a selfish reason why I wanted to happen, because, I wouldn't have, because of the business of boxing, I wouldn't have even thought about it. I was done with fighting. And then when I saw the Tyson Jones fight, it seemed like, they did a good job. And what I liked about it was, Tyson, I know Mike, I used to spar with him back in the day, and he's had it rough and been to some dark places, and he seems, that fight seems as if it got him in a good shape and got him mentally in a good place. And I thought, you know what, and I took something from that. I thought that'd be good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ever thought about it. So then when the opportunity kind of weirdly, it almost seemed like a blessing that Roy Jones called me out. Roy Jones Jr., he's just fought Mike Tyson, and then he's calling me out. And I'm thinking, it's felt like a blessing that it's for a reason. It's for a reason to help. It's for a reason to help me. It's for a reason to get me out of this, the darkness, get me, pick me up. It's a reason to rescue me. It really felt good. And then all of a sudden I'm 10 weeks of we're training every day, and I'm feeling, and it's hurting like mad, to go from, I've never done boxing training in 28 years. And to go from there to getting in shape was, I was at the physio 3 days a week. So it was really, really hard, but I was loving it. I could quite happily just rest at night, with my aches and pains, and just think, you're accomplishing something. You're doing something. But then when it's been derailed now, it's kind of thought, it's back to, then your head goes, oh, it's the same thing, it's the same stuff, another letdown, another rug pulled from under you, another thing you've got to try and deal with, another disappointment. And that's not my bad bit. But I think having come through this, if it knocks me back where it would knock me back into a dark, it's not. I'm sort of coming in and in and out, and for the most part I'm out. I'm feeling fairly good about myself, and I'm feeling fairly energized, and I'm looking after myself. So it's definitely helped. And it would only be a one-off, you know what I mean? It would only be a one-off, but it also seemed like, for the times when I made no money in my career, and I had a good career, but got ripped off terribly. I signed off the dole in the ring when I won the world title. That's how bad it was. It almost seemed like this would be payback. It would be an opportunity in the sport I love to get a decent payday for what I missed out on. And so it all seemed like just a bit of payback, which was great. I just thought, oh, finally something's working for me. So it's I've got to try and keep positive and think, this still could come off.
I grew up with some of these fighters, watching them on the telly, and to have them back in the ring again, it will bring some of the supporters back to their childhood as well. So it's like a win-win for everybody.
But I think it's inspirational, isn't it? Because these fighters, we all have tough times. We all have, lives that are hard. We all battle with different problems, whether addictions or what, there's a fallout of your youth and what's happening in your life that you struggle with as you get older. So to try and reinvent yourself, even if it's just for one night, I know for a fact, if I can get another 10 weeks, if I can get to where we were going to be in the training, that period of like 6 months training will serve me for the rest of my life. At 56, I'll just be able to keep topping up on that. That'll get me through. So
mate, I don't know how you'd get back in the ring at that age. Like, fair play to you for even thinking about it. I've only ever had a few amateur fights before, and I remember feeling the way that I felt after, we feel like you've been hit by a lorry. I don't know how you do that, but so if you do, mate, I take my hat off to you. Jesus.
Do you know what? But it's like just getting in the ring and shadowboxing and getting on the pads and all that, and just to be able to do it. And I retired long before I even got to a peak. So I'm not a fighter. I'm not someone that got beat up for the next 10 years. Went on. I was 40. I was finished before. I was finished in my 20s. So when I get back, when I get in the ring, I'm still that. There's no memory. I've got no memory of the bad times. Obviously there was a Lennox fight, but I was 26. He was the same age as me. So when he was Olympic champ, and he's a heavyweight. So I've got no bad memories. I've got no, I never got knocked out of me. I'm still. So when I go back and I get in the ring, I'm 27 again. It feels great.
Yeah, fair, mate. Mate, what was it like working for Sky Sports?
Yeah, I had 27 years. 27 years was, and you know, you go through different bosses at different periods, things change and this sort of stuff. And I managed to get through all them periods. It was wonderful because that, you know, for when I won the world title and you kind of, you know, fall down, you know, and you know people aren't looking after you. Then to get the opportunity to go into TV was really, you know, was magical for me. It was like a blessing. And then to have, you know, Ian Darke was picked up from BBC, and he was the one that, you know, said, I've talked to Glenn McCrory, he's just won the world title. He'd be, you know, it'd be ideal to be my partner. So we had a fabulous, you know, 20 years together before it got changed. They changed around the talent. But some of the, you know, I mean, some of the fights, and this is, you know, when you think, you know, at some points we were in Vegas every 2 weeks, you know, I mean, literally flying off, and it was first class.
Dangerous that is, mate.
It was first class. It was, you know, it was absolutely amazing, you know, and that went on for years, and some of the biggest fights and some of the biggest names. And
what fights spring to mind as like the highlights that you've commented on?
Marco Antonio Barrera against Eric Morales, you know, we've seen them all, but the first fight in February 17th, 2000, on a Mexican holiday, and it was just me and Ian must have been the only non-Hispanic people there at the time, because, you know, nobody really knew Barrera Morales from the British press. You know, they were just two amazing Mexican world champions.
My dad was an avid boxing fan, and he used to talk about Barrera all the time.
It was so that was great. But, you know, I mean, people like, you know, Bo Holyfield, you know, fantastic fight in the, you know, the 10th round, one of the greatest rounds in heavyweight boxing. You know, I mean, you know, the whole of Lennox's career, the whole of Tyson's career, the whole De La Hoya's career. There was, it really was I mean, I think every era is a great era if you're in it and you're enjoying it all. But there was just, you know, Ricky Hatton. There was just so many. There was so many. You know, when you're thinking week in, week out, we were doing, you know, massive world title fights. So it was a very, you know, great career. Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved it. It was, you know, and there's times, you know, like everything, it's still work. You know, it's still a, you know, we still had. Yeah, it sounds great, but there's still, when they sent you to Las Vegas for 5 days, you know, they wanted to get as much as they possibly could out of you. You know, so we were still work. But when you're dealing in the fight game around the fights, it was magical. So yeah, amazing memories.
Mate, I've got one final question for you, which will be quite current. Looks like it's going to get signed off this week. Joshua Fury, which way do you go?
Well, I mean, I hope it does get signed off this week. It would be great. I mean, because that would be such an inspiration for the public, you know, the British public, to think, you know, we've got the two best heavyweights in the world for the heavyweight. I mean, that's a monumental point of British boxing history. And, you know, if we can get it in Wembley with a maximum crowd and all the rest of it, it will be just one for the ages. I think, you know, it's a good fight. I respect both of them. They're both terrific competitors and terrific fighters. At the moment, I just think Tyson Fury's gone from strength to strength. And, you know, just to put them mentally where Joshua's got the loss to Ruiz, which is pretty much his only sort of blemish. You know, he won the return in fine style, but he was very negative. And, you know, for somebody that, you know, Ruiz, he should have demolished him. Fury, you know, has just gone out. What he did in February was amazing. So I think mentally, and boxing so much, you know, fighting so much about, you know, mental strength. I think what he's accomplished, and you talked about it earlier on, what he's accomplished outside of the ring, what he's accomplished in his personal development is magical. So I just think Tyson Fury has definitely got the edge. But it's one of those fights. It's one of those fights where you could definitely see controversy. You could definitely see a close fight, and it's one of those fights that we might. And also, when fights are worth an awful lot of money, they seem to happen more than once. So I think we could have a little run of heavyweight fights between the two of them.
The romance of the story, my heart says Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
But the thing inside my head is Joshua is an animal. And if he gets half a chance, I can't see anyone surviving him. I genuinely can't. I can't see anyone taking Joshua's shots. And I think
Tyson Fury can take Deontay Wilder's shots, who's a far bigger hitter than Joshua.
Do you think so? Do you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Wilder is the complete danger man in the division, and what Tyson did, when you saw him get up from the field, I was both fights. I was there ringside, and when he got up in the first fight, that was almost miraculous.
Incredible, wasn't it?
That was almost miraculous. Yes, there was a lot of things worked in his favor. A lot of lesser referees would have just waved it off. Is when he hit the deck. Because me sitting ringside, I thought I was just, I'm friends with Tyson, and I was just thinking, please God, he's okay. Please God, he's okay. It looked like a real career-ending knockout, and yet he got up and he went.
It was almost like he was destined for greater things. That night was not his night to go down at all.
Do you know what I said? This. When you've been around characters a long time, and I've been in the game a long time, and I had the great benefit of meeting Muhammad Ali. He asked to meet me a long time ago when I boxed in front of him. And you've seen so many characters, and you've seen their highs and their lows. And you see Tyson. I said, and I got ridiculed. It was one of the things that I speak my mind whenever whenever I'm asked, and they said, "What do you think?" I said, "Tyson Fury is an enigma." And I know him personally, and he thinks outside the box. He thinks, the rationale, he changes it up on end. And I said, in the future, without doubt, Tyson Fury will be thought alongside this in the same sort of height, in the same sort of greatness as Muhammad Ali. And everybody's like, and it's only now after the things he's done that people are already starting to say, he's going to be a great. He's not just going to be. He's going to be one of the greats.
I think I think he's won so many people over as well. It wasn't. When he's trying to make a name for himself. When he's turning up to the Klitschko fight in a Batman outfit and stuff. Who he is now is a much better person to the way he speaks about. He's always thoughtless of his family, but the way that he speaks about his family and what he holds dear to, like the earthy things that he holds dear to his heart. You didn't really see that before. You saw this sort of like bravado and charade and stuff, but now it's just him, and he comes across as a genuinely decent bloke, whereas he didn't really do that before. And I think he's won so many more people over now because he was very Marmite, I think, when he came on the scene.
Yeah.
Because you either liked him or you didn't, but now you can't not like him because he's just a decent bloke that loves his family so much.
He's also, you've seen him lay his soul bare, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think one of the things that you like is his honesty. His honesty. When he say, I've failed in lots of things, but I tried and I keep trying, and that resonates itself with all of us. I've failed and messed up, and made mistakes, and you look back and you think
But it's interesting to go back to what we loosely discussed about having a team around you. And my mate Baz saying that it's not like, when we said about winning, and I said it, it's more about, for me, about having the people around you to achieve the win. And he said boxing is not necessarily like that. I wonder whether Tyson, if he was around anyone else but his team, who is his family, whether that would have been the comeback that he, were there variables as such, having his social support network, who was his training camp, able to make that happen. So it's interesting when you start looking a little bit, and only he will know that.
Well, that's important, that in boxing, it's very much a lonely game. So, but he has got a good family around him, and they're sharp. In my life, my problems have been a bit because I've never had, all through my life, I've never had, I never had a manager that looked after me. I never had, a coach, that was top line coach that, knew the game. I took because I didn't have anybody, I took my assistant amateur coach who worked, was great and just tried his best, but didn't have any idea at the professional level or anything like that. So I didn't have my mom and dad or, a lovely, religious, just very simple folk. And so they couldn't give me any advice. So in my life, I've only learned, and I've never had that, I've never had any. So in my life, my problem's been, I learn by my mistakes, and often I don't learn by them, I just do them again. But it's you kind of just go from, and that's what it's been like, you get to somewhere, you fail, and you try and pick yourself up and do it another way. And that's been my boxing career was the same, my life's the same. So in the military, you do have, the good thing is you do have people, that's why I love coming down, I love coming down to Livingston, and working with the boys and all that, because, it's good. You don't have to make decisions. They tell you what time you need to be up. They tell you, where, all my whole life, it's all just on me, what I do. If I'm going to run and what time I get up. But there they tell you, where your bed is, what you wear, what time you get up, where you go for dinner,
It's interesting because the lads down here, they get tired of that, so they'd rather make that decision themselves. So grass is always greener, eh?
But it is. I mean, that's a big thing. The grass is always green, and I think we all have our stuff to deal with. But it's nice. So I love my association with the Royal Marines. I've got my things are all.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Time.
Good drop of port there, mate.
Unfortunately, the bottle inside's empty.
You just couldn't resist it.
I didn't think that. I don't think that lasted the weekend. I was down, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's different level. That is port. You got to be. We nickname it the body snatcher.
Right.
Because you can have a few ports, and the next thing you know, you're on your backside. It's strong stuff, eh? But mate, I really value your time, and thank you very much for the insights you've given us. And I hope that the script turns into a movie at some point in the near future. And I'm very keen to see how this potential fight turns out as well. It's something that's going to be exciting to watch. Hopefully, it goes ahead. And mate, let us know if you're ever down in the area, and we'll meet up. I'll get Tommy out as well. Great to meet you, mate.
Yeah. I mean, things are starting to open up now, so hopefully we'll be back in business soon, and I'll be down there. And if anything that you need down there, if you ever need me to pop in, I'm always there.
Top man. Thanks very much, mate.
No worries, pal. You take care. Look after yourself. And if you ever need anybody to talk to, Mo, give us a shout.
Will do.
All right, buddy.
If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast channel for updates on new releases. And why not leave a review on your podcast provider, and follow us on Instagram on the @CanWill page to show your support. Thanks, legends.